A man is stranded on a desert island. A few months go by when suddenly a beautiful woman walks out of the ocean wearing a wet suit. She says, "It looks like you've been here a long time. I bet you'd like something to eat." He says, "Yeah." So she unzips a pocket and pulls out a sandwich. Then she says, "I bet you'd like a drink." He says, "Yeah." So she unzips another pocket and pulls out a flask. She then says, "I bet you'd like to play around," and starts to pull down the main zipper. He says, "Don't tell me you have a set of golf clubs in there." A teacher is taking roll in an old rural schoolhouse and realizes several of the students are missing. She isn't too worried, as the rural nature of the area often requires students to finish up chores around the farm before they're allowed to head off to school. And even then, it's not uncommon for students to get distracted on the long walk to school, so she starts the lessons. After about 30 minutes in comes Billy, all sweaty, dirty, grass stains all over, and out of breath, but smiling from ear to ear. "Where have you been, Billy?" the teacher asks. "Sorry, ma'am, I was on top of Blueberry Hill." With a sigh, the teacher tells him to take his seat. Another 30 minutes passes, and in comes Bob. He's also sweaty, has leaves and twigs in his hair, and grass stains on his hands. And he can't seem to stop smiling. "And where have you been, Bobby?" With a coy grin, he answers, "Sorry, Teach, I was out on Blueberry Hill." With another sigh, the teacher asks him to take a seat next to Billy. About 45 minutes later, little Johnny comes. He's even sweatier, dirtier, and more stained than the other two. But his smile is the biggest of all. "Let me guess, Jonathan, you were out on Blueberry Hill?" To which Johnny can answer nothing but, "Yes, ma'am." The now exasperated teacher just points to a seat next to Billy and Bob. After a moment, Johnny too takes a seat. Then, before she can even open her mouth to continue the lesson, walks a pretty young girl the teacher has never seen. She's also got grass stains all over her dress and a mess of leaves and twigs in her hair, and she appears quite flushed. "Ah," the teacher thinks to herself, "this must be the new student I heard might be joining us today." The teacher puts her hands on her hips and gives the girl her sternest stare. "Young lady, don't tell me you too were out on Blueberry Hill." The lass looks confused, cocks her head to one side, and says, "No, Mom, I am Blueberry Hill." 3 criminals are on the run from the law when they stumble onto a farm just before nightfall and decide to lay low in the barn until the heat is off. Just when they decide to leave, the farmer, after hearing reports on the radio of thieves on the loose, comes outside and sits down at the main entrance to guard the property with his shotgun. The criminals, realizing that they need to get the hell out of there, decide to quietly make a break for the back door. The first of the 3 tiptoes across the barn and snap. A twig breaks under his right foot. The farmer immediately jumps up, points his shotgun into the now dark barn, and yells, "Who's there?" To which the first criminal replies, "Meow! Ooh!" The farmer, thinking it's his cat, goes, "Oh, okay, it's just you, Mr. Biggles. Keep on your way." The second criminal, after waiting some time, decides to make his break. A few strides in, though, he too steps on a twig. Snap! And the farmer is up again, pointing his shotgun into the dark barn. "Meow!" says the criminal. "Oh, shucks!" says the farmer. "It's you again, Mr. Biggles. Never mind." And he sits back down again. Being the only one left, the third criminal decides to hightail it out of the barn too, and begins to tiptoe across to the exit. Sure enough, snap! Another twig breaks. The farmer jumps out of his chair, points his shotgun into the darkness, and yells, "Who's there?" To which the third criminal replies, "Oh, don't worry, it's just me, the cat, passing by for the 3rd time." A man named Chris sits down at a table at his high school reunion. It's been a while since the last reunion, and he can't seem to remember a single face from the crowd. Suddenly, another guy sits down beside Chris. The man is very tall, about 6'3", and his face is stretched out, as if someone was pulling his face up and down at the same time. The man introduces himself as John, a childhood friend of Chris. Chris remembers the name very well, but the man sitting beside him doesn't look anything like what he did in high school. "No worries," John says. "Almost no one recognizes me anymore. I used to be short and chubby, but nowadays I'm tall as a redwood and slim as a twig. This change of appearance happened in only a few months, too." John laughs. Chris seems a bit puzzled, so John tells him a bit more about what has happened in his life during this last year. "About 8 months ago, me and my wife lived in a slightly unsafe neighborhood. We were fine with it as we both own guns and know what to avoid there. The situation changed when my wife got pregnant. We didn't want to raise our child in an unsafe place, so we decided to move into a gated community. A few weeks after we made our decision, we found out that the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, was remaking a whole neighborhood into a modern gated community to test prototypes for Tesla. A lot of people applied to get a house there, and luckily we were accepted. The grounds are very secure, and no one but the inhabitants and different services get in or out. The only weird thing about living there is that we noticed that we started to stretch out a bit. When I moved there, I was a bit below 5'7", but as you can notice, I'm much taller now. Same goes for everyone else in the area. Well, why don't you leave? It seems very weird to live in a place where you mystically stretch out when you move in. I guess that is the price of living in an elongated community." A man applies for a job at the zoo. He'd always wanted to work for the zoo, so he goes up to the zookeeper and asks if there are any openings. "No, sorry," said the zookeeper. "We are not hiring." "But please," said the man, "I've always wanted to work for the zoo. Are you sure there's no openings? I'll literally do anything." The zookeeper thought for a moment. "Anything," he said. "Anything," the man replied. "Well," the zookeeper said, scratching his chin, "we do have one thing, but it's a little weird. Are you sure?" "I'll do it," the man said. "Just tell me what it is." "Well, you see," the zookeeper said, "one of our most popular exhibits is our gorilla exhibit, and unfortunately, Jack, our gorilla died last week. Our patrons are going to be really disappointed unless we find a new gorilla. I know it's weird, but would you mind dressing up like a gorilla and staying in the cage until we find a new one?" The man thought it sounded strange, but he agreed anyway. Maybe it'll be a springboard to other opportunities, he thought. So the next week, the man shows up to work dressed like a gorilla and takes his place in the cage. Soon people start flocking to the exhibit, and he discovers his newfound popularity. Embracing the role, the man decides to begin doing gorilla things. Pounding on his chest, eating bananas, the whole 9 yards. The crowds are eating it up, laughing and cheering. Soon, his exhibit is again the most popular in the zoo, with kids and parents pressing against the glass. The man thought. This is fun. If they want a show, I'll give them a show. Looking next door, he notices the lion cage, where a male lion sleeps in the sun. Looking toward the fence, he notices a tree in the gorilla cage and a branch overhanging the lion's exhibit. With a burst of bravado, the man in the gorilla suit climbs the tree and walks out onto the overhanging branch to gasps and ohs from the crowd. Tossing aside his better judgment, the man begins to toss twigs at the lion, who wakes from his slumber, annoyed as the crowd continues to cheer. They're really into this, the man thought. Let's kick it up a notch. To further antagonize the lion, the man begins to shake the branch violently, harder and harder. Twigs, leaves, and sticks are falling in the lion's face, who is growing madder and madder, roaring in aggression, and the crowd gasps in shock. Suddenly, the branch breaks, and the man tumbles to the ground inside the lion's exhibit. With bravado quickly turning to panic, the man looks up to see the lion. Hunger in his eyes begin to slowly approach. With each slow step, the crowd gasps in horror. Not knowing what else to do, the man in the gorilla suit gets up and starts to shout, "Somebody help me! Help! Get me out of here!" Suddenly, a quiet, raspy voice echoes from the lion. "Shut up, pal, or you'll get us both fired!" A lone traveler needed to stop and wait out a storm. She came across a church settled near the top of a mountain far away from civilization and decided to ask for them to lend hospitality to her. A nun greeted her at the entrance when she approached the church and led her inside. There, she was given food, water, and shelter for the night. "You are free to roam and explore this church," the nun told her. "You are our guest and may do as you please. However, you aren't to enter the basement under any circumstances." "Why not?" asked the traveler, confused. "What's down there?" "I would tell you." The nun spoke slowly with her head down. "But you're not a nun." The traveler thought the nun's demeanor was strange, but brushed it off. When going to her bed for the night, the traveler passed by the basement. She heard strangled, sloshing noises like a damp rag, followed by the sound of a feral animal crying in pain. Disturbed, she found a nun in the church. "What the is going on in that basement?" she asked the nun. "I would tell you," the nun said, "but you're not a nun." "If I become a nun, will I be able to find out what's in that basement?" asked the traveler, frustrated. I guess so," the nun shrugged. "But are you really willing to put in a lifetime worth of commitment just to know what's in the basement?" The traveler nodded eagerly. Curiosity was ripping her to shreds. So began her training. For many long years, she prayed, performed rituals, and learned the word of the Lord. Her connection with God strengthened, but so did her flaming need to know what the was in that basement. After long years of hard work, she finally earned her title as a nun. "Since you are now a nun in the church told her, "it's about time I show you what's in the basement. But first, you must pass a test of your faith. Tell me, which saint saw a flaming and winged figure in the sky when receiving the stigmata?" "Why, Saint Francis of Assisi, of course," the traveler replied confidently. "Excellent. Next question, name a female saint who is not a doctor of the church." "Saint Joan of the Arc, naturally." "Wonderful. Finally, who was the second pope?" "Saint Linus." "Sister, may I ask how this is a test of my faith?" "I was just messing with you. Come now, I'll show you the basement. I know the curiosity has been troubling your heart." Finally, after years and years of hard work, the traveler, now nun, was going to discover what was in the basement. She could hardly contain her excitement and pride of knowing the reward for her labor would be soon received. They went down the halls of the church and to the basement door. The nun got out the sacred key to the door, opened it slowly, and she saw... "Oh, I would tell you, but you're not a nun." It was Monday, and John called his boss because he was sick. "Boss, can I get a day off?" "I'm sick today." "No problem. You will make it up when you feel better. Is it something serious, and will you be gone for a longer period?" "I'll swing," the boss asked. "I'll be coming in tomorrow. Don't worry," John replied. "Great. I will see you tomorrow then." Then it was Tuesday. John came to job in perfect health, thanked the boss for the day off, and was working as usual. So the week passed, then the weekend, and it was already next Monday. "Boss, I'm sorry to call you again, but can I get this Monday off as well? I'm sick." A bit weird, 2 Mondays in a row, but what can you do? The boss thought. It's just a coincidence. "Sure, no problem. You'll make it up when you're feeling better," the boss replied. And so came Tuesday. Boss was worried about John but didn't want to pry, so he let it slide. John worked as usual that time, and for the rest of the week. Then the next Monday arrived. Boss, I'm really sorry, but can I have this Monday off as well? John asked. Boss knew something was off, but better not to have John around sick if he was even really sick, so he decided to talk in private after John was feeling better. Okay, John, the boss replied. This is getting weird, but you just rest. You can't function while you're sick. I suppose I'll see you tomorrow? Yes, I'll be coming tomorrow as usual. John was at work the next day, so boss decided to find out what was going on. John, we need to talk. 1 Monday is not a problem. 2 Mondays in a row are a bit weird, but things happen. But 3 Mondays are no coincidence. What is happening? I need an explanation. The boss was not happy at all. John decided to be honest. Well, here's the thing. Every Monday before work, I go to my cousin for a cup of tea. Every time we start drinking tea, chatting, and we always end up having sex. Oh my God, sex with your cousin. You're sick. Well, I told you so.